Dear friends, welcome to our channel A3 Stories. Please like, share and subscribe. And A3 Stories Together for Love by Shelley M. Part 2 of 4. Chapter 2. The news of Aslan Mir's death had been communicated to her in person by the elderly lawyer Mr. Khan. The news had hit her like an avalanche. Father of her unborn child was dead. Mr. Khan had considered Arfa like his own daughter, so he had traveled all the way to see her. Arfa was surprised to see him as the cottage in the mountains was remote and required a very long journey from the plains. For him the journey would prove to be too taxing. She had a foreboding that there must be something significant for him to come to see her in person. The lady companion had served them coffee before leaving them alone in the sitting area. Arfa, I'm sorry I came without informing beforehand, but it was important for me to see you in person. There is something I want to tell you and I want you to be strong, my dear. Mr. Khan was preparing her for the bad news that he had come to deliver. After all, he had been with her right from the beginning. Mr. Khan, what is it? There was an underlying anxiety in Arfa's voice. Mr. Khan had never minced his words and he proceeded to tell Arfa, I'm sorry to let you know that the young master, Mr. Aslan Mir, had been very ill for past few weeks. The doctors had tried really hard to save him, but he passed away 3 weeks ago. I had been very ill myself and was recovering from a surgery. That is why I couldn't come earlier to see you. Arfa had expected something big looming in the horizon, but the death of the person whose child she carried dealt her an emotional blow which Mr. Khan was fully aware of. The future emerged bleak. Her child will never be able to meet his father. The sheer magnitude of the loss had deeply saddened Arfa. Vulnerability was penetrating deep into her bones. The clock was ticking by, and she sat frozen. The lawyer had feared that in her delicate condition any bad news would not be good for her, but it was important for her to know. However, Mr. Khan prayed that Arfa would be able to deal with the bad news with much more courage than any ordinary person. She had always been a very practical and sensible person. He stood up and walked towards Arfa, holding her hands. My child, I know it is most unfortunate in the current situation for you, but for the sake of the child you need to look after yourself and be brave. Arfa looked at him with deeply pained eyes. Mr. Khan, you are aware of everything? She was seeking for his understanding. He shook his head in response, his eyes misting over. Arfa, there is something I want to address while I'm here, and I hope you will understand how important it is for you and the child that you agree to my suggestion. She looked at him and was wondering what more was to come. She dreaded the moment of enlightenment. With this new development, the eldest-born son Shahzain Mir of the master Mr. Shah Mir wants to meet you in person. He continued as she sat silently. He knows about you and your child and his brother's involvement in all of it. His father was inconsolable after the loss of his young son, therefore he was unable to come before. He had insisted for me to see you before and tell you about his wish. Arfa was speechless. After all, nothing was going as they had agreed upon months ago between the lawyer trusted by the Mirs as a family member and her. There was supposed to be no personal meeting with the Mirs directly, but times have changed, altering all prior arrangements that they had agreed upon. She disengaged her hands from the elderly man whom she respected a lot, and she didn't doubt his sincerity one bit. Her words disrupted the silence. I don't know what he wants to see me for. After the death of his brother, I am solely responsible for my child, and I will not give him away. Please inform him on my behalf. The lawyer understood her distress and tried to calm her. He is a very fair man, my dear, and he always looks after his family. To him, his family and their needs are of prime importance. For someone as magnanimously successful as him, it is very rare for someone in his position to be so sensitive about his family. In the current condition you are in, you are no less than a family member for him. Arfa silently absorbed the important details about Shazane Mir, the heir of the Murs. He didn't want to come unannounced, respecting your privacy and freedom of choice to meet him on his request. If you agree, then I'll inform him, and he will come to see you. I know it's a very difficult situation for you, my child, but I will appreciate if you agree to meet him once. If you think that my meeting him is important, then I will meet him, Mr. Khan. Arfa gave in. She didn't think she had the courage or the stamina remaining to fight the heir of the Murs, knowing fully well that she did agree to carry the next generation of the Murs, hence it was her responsibility to meet the family members for the sake of her child. Bless you, my child. I pray that may God protect you both and deliver a miracle. I will now leave and hope that you will look after yourself. Just accept it as destiny and move forward, my dear, as you have to be a tower of strength for the child. He bid her goodbye and left with his driver, refusing to join her for a meal. He did look weaker than before. It seemed the surgery and the ensuing long journey to the estate up in the mountains had been overly tiring for him. After he left, she had a meal as she couldn't forget about the child's welfare in her anxious state of mind. She missed her afternoon siesta and was restless. Sheer anxiety was gathering within her, but she was helpless as twig who was left in a cyclone. How could she have withstood what destiny had in store for her? Only a few weeks ago she had taken a life-changing decision to help someone in need. And her need to stay away from any relationship. She didn't do relationship, period. It just wasn't her. To Arfa, she had seen it all so often. To her, it was as if once you connect with someone, it becomes a weakness and then you're taken advantage of. When you feel you are so deeply involved that just the thought of spending another day without the most special someone is no less than dying a small death. Suddenly the most important person disengages himself from you and walks away from you without a backward glance just because your presence is not convenient anymore, hence a clean breakup. Most unfortunate end to a relationship where one person is damaged for life while the other had never even bothered to consider what became of the one you left behind. She had been a working woman and well into her 30s, hardly a few colleagues had been pally with her at work. Her social life was zero. She went sightseeing, window shopping, even lonely movies, solo lunches, and dinners were her thing. It had been a couple of years since she was satisfied working at the huge textile establishment. The older Mr. Shamir had taken a back step and his younger son was running the firm now. Aslan Mir was good to his employees and the staff respected him. He never had problems with the union as he was always very considerate of them. That was the reason of his instant success among the workers. She had received an email from the lawyer of the firm one day and was summoned to their office. Arfa was surprised as it was a first for her. The confidential lawyer was an elderly man and had understood her perplexity. He had calmed her and said that he was approaching her at the employer's instructions. He had asked for her discretion, and she had promised him that whatever was said shall stay within the confines of his office. She was a plain-looking woman of short stature and on the healthier side, pale complexion, and short hair was how she preferred to keep it. No one would consider her beautiful, but she had never once complained about missing on the beauty stakes. The lawyer, Mr. Khan, told her that they had her background checked and knew that she would find it offensive, but he wanted to be honest about it all. He liked Arfa as a person. She was certain that there must surely be a substantial reason behind for him having her background checked. She was being her usual sensible self, addressed him. I am sure you will tell me the reason behind the inquisition into my background, therefore there is no need for me to rush being offended, is there? He smiled at her practical approach. You See, the young master of this establishment seeks your assistance in something which is very significant to him, and he has a belief in you that you will understand his position and not say no to his proposition without considering it thoroughly. Arfa didn't show, but her curiosity was heightened. You see, young Master Aslan is the younger child of old Master Mr. Shamir. He is unwell and wishes for him to marry, as he wants to see the next generation before he dies. Arfa was listening to him in silence, and it was a blessing in disguise, for the elderly lawyer, as what he had in store for her further would really prove to be challenging for her, and that was putting it mildly. He cleared his throat and carried on while Arfa was patiently listening. Somewhere in her conscience bells were ringing, signifying whatever was coming might not be as simple as he was sounding. Aslan Mir loves his father very much, but he is not very fond of getting married to have children alone. As he wishes to make his father happy, he does not wish to introduce just anyone into his life for this purpose only and let them go once he has achieved his target. Okay, so his employer was a conscience man and she respected him for his honesty. At least he would not misuse someone for his own gains and then would cut them out of his life, leaving them stranded. Young Master Aslan would be offering you a comfortable life if you agree to participate in his quest for an heir. The lawyer didn't sugar coat and got to the point. His perceptiveness sensed a stillness in Arfa, but before she bolted from his office, he wanted to tell her exactly that was being asked of her. Young Master does not prefer female company and wishes to hide this truth from his father and his elder brother, whom he admires the most, even more than his father. Arfa was shell-shocked. Her eyes had widened, and she couldn't believe she heard him right. Yes, you heard me right. The first time he is homosexual, but he has kept it in wraps until today. Had it not been for his father's wishes, he would never have let this secret from the bag that he is not into women at all. The elderly lawyer certainly didn't believe in mincing words. I know this must come as a shock to you, but I had insisted on being completely honest with you when I was asked to approach you, my child. I believe it is my duty that I should not conceal the facts with you. And then you decide whether you want to help or not. The austerely lawyer had a softened expression for Arfa. If you agree to have a child for the young master through the help of his doctors, wherein you will not have to meet the young master at all. He will arrange for his team to ensure that you are provided with the best of medical attention throughout the term, and he will have you moved to his estate in the mountains. If you wish to keep this position, then he will have a long leave of absence arranged for you. Thereafter you can resume your work once the baby is safely delivered. Arfa had a graying pallor as the words sank into her, and her brain was revolting against the actual meaning of it all. She looked at him with blank eyes, and her hands were cold, the coldness seeping into every cell of her being. The ever-perceptible Mr. Khan was seeing her, the actual truth from someone who was powerless in front of the Mirs. If she thought of challenging her rights for the child come tomorrow, he knew the details he had shared with her were ugly, and he didn't want to dress them up prettily. It was proving to be too much even for someone as practical as Arfa, but he was doing what he had to. Arfa, I know you must be thinking how someone in my age is being so candid about this whole thing, but believe me, I want to lay the facts bare in their clear position as they are, and not covering it in a prettier wrapping. If you decide to help him out, you will be sworn to secrecy. Rest assured the child will be the heir to the Mir family and will be taken care of as befits him or her. The child will have everything he desires and needs. She looked at him and then smiled at the lawyer. Even a mother? And the lawyer was silenced for a couple of seconds. It seems the heir to the Mirs will have everything but a mother who gives birth to her, and will be removed from his orbit as soon she is done with her duties of carrying him for months and then delivering him into this world, leaving him alone and never turning back to look what became of the child, while she is expected to walk away with a silver-lined wallet as compensation and cutting off all ties with the child, forever. Am I right, Mr. Khan? Her voice was emotionless. It seemed that she was carved out of stone with no feelings. And certainly no warmth at all, as they had thought her to be. Her voice was low, but the elderly lawyer clearly heard her. Whereas the man behind the glass wall had heard it all too. Each syllable of it. The lack of emotions was due to her experience in years which had smothered her anger into icicles of contempt which she felt. Aslan's attempt to resolve all his problems in one full swoop, where he was placing Arfa at the center stage to perform. No woman in her right mind would agree to his proposal, but Arfa was not an ordinary person. She was a sensitive person who kept to herself while ensuring no one would get hurt due to her actions or words. Shazane Mir was witness to this conversation and had known about everything right from the beginning. When the lawyer had called him last week to brief him what Aslan was planning to do. With his experience and wisdom behind him, Mr. Khan had taken Shazane into confidence. He had been worried for Arfa, fatherly concern evident in his voice. Shazane had asked Mr. Khan to do as Aslan bid him to do. In the interim, he intended to find out the real cause behind Aslan's action, which was too hasty. What was instigating him to move things so rapidly? He liaised with the medical team Aslan had lined up for the predictable future. They were being rushed by Aslan Mir too. The haste was mysterious, while Aslan had always preferred a moderate pace in all his dealings. Shazane had flown back and met the lawyer and the medical team too, but couldn't connect the dots. A piece of puzzle was missing, and he wanted time to unearth it, but Aslan wasn't waiting. He was rushing headlong into it. His desire to present his father with the next generation of Mir was not the reason for his haste. He had decided to get to the bottom of the facts without rocking the boat for his brother. Shazane knew that there was a significant reason behind Aslan's actions. His brother was fighting his own battles and had not confided in his elder brother, which was unusual in the circumstances. The shock had been immense when Mr. Khan had informed him about his brother's orientation and his religiousness in having himself hide behind a disguise that all was normal with him, had Shazane staggering in its wake. Once he got over the shock, he accepted it. He had to. He intended to find out the real reason and help Aslan out of whatever predicament he was suffering from. The lousiest and shortest marriage, which dissolved in a divorce, had Shazane off women for a couple of years, but that didn't mean he didn't appreciate them, or he had turned against them. He had accepted that it was destined and moved on in his life. He just didn't get around to think to settle down a second time. Shazane's lack of interest in family life had put the pressure on Aslan Mir by his father, who wanted to see both of his sons settled into a happy life with their families flourishing. Their father's wish of seeing his grandchildren someday soon was thinning with each passing day. Together for Love by Shelley M. End of Part 2. Stay connected to watch Part 3. Do subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for receiving updates for all our new stories.